4 times a year, all investment managers that have over 100 million in assets under management have to file what is called a Form 13F. These forms disclose exactly what moves the biggest investors in the world like Ray Dalio, Michael Burry, and Charlie Munger are making in their portfolios, and more importantly, in my opinion, it tells us what moves Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway has been making over the past few months. So in this video, I want to briefly go over every move that was made in Buffett's portfolio, dig a little deeper into some of the bigger moves that he made, and I also want to give you 4 major takeaways from this report. So that being said, let's jump into it. Now, before we dig deeper into the moves that Buffett has recently made, there's something we need to understand about this particular 13F that just got released, and this is something Berkshire Hathaway pointed out in a news release. Since Berkshire Hathaway acquired General Reinsurance Corporation, also known as Gen Re, in December 1998, reportable 13F securities owned by Gen Re or its subsidiaries have been reported by New England Asset Management Incorporated, a wholly owned subsidiary of Gen Re. Those filings have been referenced in Berkshire's Form 13Fs as other included managers. Beginning with Form 13F to be filed later today, the holdings of Gen Re will be included in Berkshire's 13F filings. So you need to understand that some of the companies listed right here that were technically owned by Gen Re are now going to be shown on Berkshire Hathaway's 13F because Gen Re is a company owned by Berkshire Hathaway. So some of these companies, while it looks like Berkshire Hathaway may have added some capital to these positions, they were technically already owned by Berkshire Hathaway, so it's important to point that out. So now let's look at each of the moves Buffett made in his portfolio line item by line item, and to analyze this, I'm going to be looking at a website called dataroma.com. It's a really cool website. I'm not in any way affiliated with them, but they provide some really great data for institutional investors. We can see the activity from each position, we can see the share count change, and we can see the percent change to Warren Buffett's portfolio. So let's go ahead and start at the top and look at the positions he added capital to that he already owned. We can see he added capital to HPQ, OXY, Apple, Bank of America, MKL, Citigroup, and Paramount Global. These are positions that already existed in his portfolio that now are larger positions. Now he had 3 new buys as well. You can see he added Capital One Financial, COF, DEO, and VTS. Those are positions we might talk about here just a little bit later in the video. But now let's look at some positions that he reduced in his portfolio. We have Amazon, AON, Ally Financial, ATVI, Activision Blizzard. We have CE, CVX, MCK, GM. Now, the next positions we're going to look at, Warren Buffett sold out completely. You can see we have BK, a bank stock. We have RH, Taiwan Semiconductor. That's really interesting. And then we have USB, US Bancorp. The first major move that I want to talk about is selling out of Chevron Corporation, stock ticker CVX. Now, he didn't sell his entire position, but he did sell a good chunk. You can see right here, he sold about 18.76% of his stake in Chevron Corporation. Chevron now makes up around 6.65% of his entire portfolio. And if we come over here, we can see the share price returns have been lagging for quite some time. Year to date, they're down about 10%. Over the past year, down 9%, and over the past 5 years, still lagging behind the market, even though it is in the green, up around 21%, and over the past 10 years, up only 25.31%. Now, what is interesting about this position is he started adding capital in Q3 of 2020, so he added capital around this area right here, and he just reduced his position by about 20%. Now, throughout the past few years, he's been buying and selling at different points, so it's hard to say exactly what his profit loss is on this position. But this is an interesting company from a dividend perspective. We can see they have a pretty decent starting dividend yield sitting at around 3.84%. If we jump over to the dividend tab on Seeking Alpha, which by the way, you can get for a huge discount at my link in the description. If we come down here again, like I just said, close to a 4% starting dividend yield, nice low payout ratio of just 30.34%. And a somewhat okay 5-year growth rate, 5.76. It's not the highest, but it is still decent dividend growth. But they also have a good history of increasing their dividend payouts at 35 consecutive years. If we scroll down, we can see that visualized over a 10-year period. Pretty consistent dividend payouts and consistently increasing those dividends over time. So again, although there was a 19% reduction in this position still makes up a pretty large position in his portfolio at around 7%. Another major move that Buffett made that I do want to point out was he increased his position in Occidental Petroleum Corporation, stock ticker OXY, by around 9%. If we jump back over to Dataroma, you can see he added around 17 million shares of this company in the past quarter. And again, this is another energy company that has seen really lagging returns over the past decade. If we look year to date, down around 4% over the past year, down 13% over the past 5 years down 30%, and over the past 10 years down 32.8%. So again, definitely has underperformed the market over the past decade. Let's look at it from a dividend perspective. If we scroll down, really low starting dividend yield of just 1.23%. Now the payout ratio is extremely low as well at only 6.27%, so they could pay out higher dividends if they should choose to do so. But if we look at the dividend history, this is where things become a little more interesting. We can see it does look like they cut their dividend payouts in 2020, and it's recovered a little bit since then, but it's still nowhere nearly as high as it was pre-2020. Now, one metric that I'd love to look at is free cash flow per share, and I want to look for the growth, and you can see that on the cash flow statement. So if we scroll down here, come a little bit lower, and right here you can see the metric free cash flow per share. And if we look here, we can see this company has actually had extremely good free cash flow per share growth. Now, this makes me feel a lot more confident in this company long term, despite what we've seen from a dividend perspective and a share price appreciation perspective. If they can continue to increase their free cash flow per share growth, I think the share price appreciation will follow, and we'll probably also see some pretty nice dividend increases in the future as well. Another major move that I want to quickly point out is that Buffett sold out of his entire stake in US Bancorp, stock ticker USB, currently trading at $28.68 per share. If we jump back over to Dataroma again, you can see he sold 100% of his position, which was around 6.6 million shares. But this is actually a position he's been selling out of for a while. If we scroll down and look at Q4 2022, we can see he reduced his position by about 91.4%. And in Q3 of 2022, he actually reduced his position by 35%. So this quarter, he went ahead and sold out of the entire position. Now, this was a position they added back in 2006, and they added capital to it a couple of other times. As you can see, year to date, the company has dropped in its share price by quite a bit, down about 35.75%. And if we look at this article at Seeking Alpha, it kind of makes it pretty clear why. We can see the financial industry is deeply interconnected, and it's easy for ripple effects to occur, which is probably the biggest reason for the huge sell-off we've seen in USB over the past couple of months. Now, again, the good news about this dropping in share price is the company now has a starting dividend yield of 6.5%. And something that's interesting to me as well is the short interest for this company is only sitting at 2.34%. So although there has been a lot of downward pressure with a lot of regional bank stock, it still seems like there's not a lot of people betting against this stock. Now let's go ahead and dig into the dividend metrics just a little bit for this company. We can see again starting dividend yield of around 6.5%. Payout ratio is sitting at around 50.5%, so that is a little bit higher than I typically like to see it, but it's still not dangerous. Now we have a 5-year growth rate of around 10% and a dividend growth history of 12 years. Let's go ahead and look at that dividend history, and you can see the increases have been pretty consistent actually, a lot better than a lot of other bank stocks. Now this wasn't the only financial position that Buffett sold out of, but I'll touch on that in just a moment. So we talked about some of the major moves that Buffett did make in his portfolio over the past quarter, but I still want to give you 4 major takeaways, and this is actually something that I talked about on my Twitter account just a couple of days ago. So go follow me over there if you're interested in getting more investing insight, but I'll go ahead and walk you through a couple of the tweets that I put out. But the number one point I wanted to make is that Buffett did sell some bank stocks, but he isn't against them either. Buffett sold 100% of his position in USB and BK, and he also reduced his position in Ally Financial by 2.68%. But he increased his position in Bank of America by 2.25%, which now makes up over 9% of his entire portfolio. And we can see this is actually one of the largest positions in his entire portfolio. If we scroll down, it's second only to Apple, which makes up an astounding 46% of his portfolio. Now, the second takeaway that we do want to look at is that Buffett does have concerns over the current geopolitical landscape, and this led him to selling 100% of his shares in Taiwan Semiconductor. And we can see this is actually something he started selling off just a little while ago. If we click on activity and scroll down, one of the things you'll see in Q4 of 2022 is he reduced his position in Taiwan Semiconductors by 86%, but he went ahead and sold out of the entire position in the most recent quarter. And this is actually something he talked about in a recent interview, so I'll go ahead and play the clip.
I do think that there is a danger there to some. I don't have any idea. There's actually a danger of seismic action. I mean, and where they're located,
The third major takeaway is that Warren Buffett absolutely loves Apple stock, so much so that he's comfortable with it being almost 50% of his entire portfolio. In last quarter's 13F filing, Apple made up 38.9% of his portfolio, and in his most recent filing, Apple now makes up 46.4% of his entire portfolio. This is due to the fact that Buffett added over 20 million shares, and Apple is up over 11% in the past 3 months. And the fourth and last takeaway is actually one of the most interesting in my opinion, and that is Buffett is not afraid of a falling stock. In the past year, stock ticker PARA, Paramount Global, is down 43.5%, and it's down 28% in the last month. They just had a very disappointing earnings report, and they cut their dividend by 80%. And despite all of this, Buffett actually increased his position in Paramount by 93,000 shares. Again, if we jump over to Seeking Alpha and look at Paramount, you can see the company's currently trading at around $15 per share. And look at the past year, down over 46%. Look at the short interest, almost 20%. If we click on earnings, we can see they had huge misses on their most recent earnings report. And again, like I just mentioned, they just had a huge cut to their dividend. So Buffett definitely sees something in this company, I guess, that most people aren't seeing. Personally, I don't see any reason that I would consider adding this company in my portfolio, but I'm also not Warren Buffett. So there you go. Those are some of the moves the greatest investor of all time made in his portfolio in Q1 of 2023. It's important to remember that no investor is right 100% of the time, and their timeline to consider something a successful investment may be way different than yours. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.